Okay, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith in Manchester in the middleweight division. Probably the first real big fight of the year. A domestic clash, not obviously a world title clash, a world. I don't know how to explain it. It's a classic British scrap is what I would say. Isn't a fight that really will capture the whole of boxing really. Two relatively, I'll say Liam Smith has a decent name in boxing, not a huge one. Obviously, Eubank, everybody knows that he has the following on social media. Obviously, with the second name Eubank, everybody knows Eubank Jr. So there's obviously interest when he fights, and he's turning quite a polarizing character. Has actually turned quite into a bit of a fan-friendly figure as well after the whole thing with Conor Ben. So yeah, an interesting fight though this one. Two guys who I'd say are, I think Liam Smith, he's at a bit of an interesting point in his career. Obviously, he's won his last few. Obviously, I remember fantastic winning against Anthony Fowler and also beating Jesse Vargas. And then, I ain't going to try and pronounce the brother's name, Hassan Mokuinu, in his last fight. Smith, a very good fighter, but I think very much at a British level. Obviously had the big fight with Canelo, but other than that, had no real fights that you would think really capture the attention as much. For Eubank, obviously beat Liam Williams in his last fight with a fantastic performance, and yeah, he's won his quite a few. Obviously, he's at a point now. Eubank, I actually like what he's doing. He's kind of inviting these sort of grudge matches in a way. You know, him and Williams were going back and forth. Him and Liam Smith don't really like each other. Seems like Eubank does vex a lot of these sort of I don't know what I don't want to stereotype the type of fighter, but like these sort of classic barn burner type fighters. You know, the likes of Liam Smith, Williams. Him and Tony. I mean, Tony Bellew was at a much higher level than these guys, but him and Tony Bellew don't really get on. I remember him and Spike O'Sullivan would get back in the day. Him and Billy Joe Saunders obviously famously never got on. I had the fight. I don't know, he attracts these type of people. Eubank, they don't seem to like him. He's quite, he gets under her skin quite easily. And washing the gloves are off, I think Eubank got under Smith's skin quite well. I know Smith will say he didn't. I know whether that will be a thing on Fight Night, we'll see, you know. To me, getting under fighter's skin, the only thing it really, the only time I think that's really significant is if that plays into their emotions on Fight Night. If they're just annoying them beforehand, to me, it's not as important. There's sometimes when it can really play a factor, like when Fury got into Klitschko's skin and that really affected him. But you know, there's some fights, like I thought Amir Khan got into Cal Brook's skin quite well. It didn't build up to their fight, but we saw in the fight Cal Brook battered him. So it's just one of those. It's like it can work if you have the right type of guy who can be mentally quite weak. But so we'll see how Smith responds to that, though. To be honest, and even like, you know, we see a lot of times in fights, when it does go well, you think of get under a fighter's skin, it can really be effective. But like I said, you had the Cal Brook one. I thought Amir Khan really got the Cal Brook skin, but we saw in the fight it was relatively one-sided. So I think it's one of those where, yeah, I don't know, it just depends on the individual, I think. But an interesting fight though, nonetheless. Like I said, a classic British scrap. You got Cal Brook talking about fighting the winner now. Whilst I don't support this, I think Brook should stay retired. Him and Eubank would be interesting. So I think, yeah, because I like the route that Eubank's going down, getting these sort of domestic fights. Obviously it was after the Conor Ben fight. That didn't happen because we all know why. And yeah, I'm interested to see how this one goes though. Very intriguing nonetheless in Manchester. And so first I want to start off with Liam Smith and what I feel he needs to do in this fight to get the best of Eubank Jr. First, I don't think he needs to get into a war. I think he needs to outbox Eubank. I think he's the better boxer out of the two. He has all the fundamentals quite to a T, quite well versed in that way. Smith, solid jab, quite underrated jab, fantastic body shots, fantastic uppercuts. I think he kind of is quite light on his feet as well, bounces a lot, and I think that's what you need to do. So I think outboxing Eubank. Eubank likes to swing a lot, so I think if you can pick your shots at a distance, I think it will be very beneficial for him. I don't think that Eubank really. He became better in that Williams fight in his boxing, but naturally he's a fighter. He's not a boxer. at heart he wants to have a scrap with you. And I think for Smith, it's the smart thing to do. I think just stay on the outside. I mean, not staying outside actually, it's a lie, but just sort of keep Eubank at a distance. I think it's one thing about, like I said, about Smith, because they are so much heat between the two. I do think there will come a point where this does become a real war, and I think once that happens, that's where I think Smith needs to sort of be the old man in there and be smarter with it. You know, when you look at Liam Smith, again, he's not the type of fighter you look at. I think he's at an elite level. He's very much at British level, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are some fantastic British fighters. You know, even if you look at like the Taylor tape, for example, 36 wins for Smith, 34 for Eubank. Both are 32 wins. More losses for Smith, 1 draw, 34. So they're at a similar point, but I don't know, with Smith, the way he fights, he just fights more like a veteran. I think Eubank still fights very much, not like an amateur so much, because he's very, very good, Eubank, but just fights a little bit too wild sometimes, and I think that can help. Reach-wise, Eubank does have a slight advantage, but I still feel like it should be... You can always... I think if you're the better boxer, you can get away around that. So, first thing I'd say, like I said, outbox Eubank. Don't rush is my second point. I don't think you... Like I said, you don't need to rush any of your work in this. I think if you can keep this fight at a pace... Eubank likes to fight a bit quicker, paced in there. I think if you can keep it slow, like I said, it's what Billy Joe Saunders did to him. Billy Joe Saunders made the fight very lethargic for Eubank, and Eubank couldn't get anything off. George Groves did it at points, but I think in the end, Groves, because of his arm, when it became quite messy. But yeah, Eubank just likes it to be very dirty and very scrappy in there. He's got better recently, like I said, he looked very good in the Williams fight, but I still think that this is just one of them where I think if you're Smith, you don't need to be hasty in there. You just take your time. I think if you rush your work, you're going into Eubank's game and you're taking the fight to him and almost giving the advantage. I think if you just fight smart, don't rush, take your time, and I think the fight's there for you. I think if you can get to the body, and I think the one thing that I would say for Smith, my third point, is to me you got to keep this fight up close. I know Eubank obviously has the reach advantage, which is in his benefit, but to me, I think if you can keep the fight close, you've also got to... I don't think... Sometimes fighters fight the fighter instead of just fighting their own game sometimes. Smith does excellent work when he's up close, ripping you to the body, getting his uppercuts in. And I think, whilst I think Eubank also has amazing uppercuts himself, I just think you've got to be smart and just fight your fight, don't fight his fight. So, to me, that's what I would say for Smith. I think, yeah, I'll box Eubank, don't rush in the fight, keep it in the centre, and I think you should have it. I think he's a superior boxer out of the two. So, I do think it's an interesting fight nonetheless. And I think with Smith, how he takes it, I think if he's emotional, I think he plays into Eubank's hands. And if he tries to fight with him, don't think it's smart. So I think if you keep it a bit more technical, obviously he's not an elite boxer by any means, Smith. He can have a scrap with you, and he's very game in there, as we all know. But I think you just, like I said, just stick to the home free. I don't think you kind of... Sometimes guys go a bit too far, being rugged and also being cautious. I think sometimes you get guys who almost don't want to throw that many shots because they want to be a bit more smart, but then you get guys who go too much with that and throw everything at them. And I think if you're Smith, find the balance in there. You don't need to be reckless against Eubank, and you got enough there where you can take the fight to him. So that's what I would say. And then getting on to Eubank Jr. and what I think he needs to do in this fight. He's got very good recently, Eubank. He seems to have definitely improved as a boxer and as a fighter. But interesting. I said keep the fight in the centre up close, and I'm actually going to say the same thing I said for Smith, and I'm going to say the same thing for Eubank, because I think for Eubank, he likes to load up and wind up his shots a lot, Eubank. The amount of times I see him like swing for left, swing for right. Smith has got a very good footer, but he doesn't really move anywhere. So I think if you can keep him at a certain range, I think you'll be easier to land those shots. Because regardless, I don't think Eubank really has destructive one punch KO power. He's very much a volume thing, but he's still able. You catch a guy at the right shot, especially at this level, you can drop them. And I think he's got it in him to do it, Eubank. So I think keeping the fight Up close, I think, is definitely the one I'd say first. And second one, and this is gonna be interesting because it's something Eubank did a lot in his in the Williams fight, and I think he's got quite good at it actually, and that's fight off the back foot. Eubank, I don't think, has the ability to kind of fight in between styles. He can't fight off the back and the front foot. He hasn't got the. It takes a certain level of skill to do both. Really, there's some guys who can't take that. Can only kind of fight off the back foot once they've decided they're going to fight off the back foot. They can't just do it naturally. There are some guys who can do it, and they're the elite level guys. They are the guys who you look at as some of the greats in the sport. But I don't think Eubank can do it. I think sometimes defensively it's the same sort of thing. Sometimes where he rarely ever looks slick, Eubank. When he does look slick is when he decides he's going to just start being a showman and get into his opponents and trying to act like he's untouchable. But he only does that when he decides he wants to do that. He doesn't do that naturally. It doesn't come to him naturally. You know, he won't throw a punch and then maybe somebody comes over the overhand and just duck out the way of it naturally. The only time that will happen is if he doesn't really ever do this anyway, but if he throws a punch and he just decides already immediately in his head that he's going to duck, that's when it will happen. It won't be instinct to him. So I think that's one thing I'd say about Eubank. So yeah, like I said, keep the fight up close. I think you can fight off the back foot. You do a lot of work. He's able to pick Williams off brilliantly. That jab was really good in the fight. So I think if you can get Smith even to come to you a bit more, be a bit more, you can almost make him be sloppy. Because if you can get Smith into a fight, I think that benefits Eubank so much. And if you can get him off the back foot, I think that's where you can land the right shots at the right time and pick him off with the right counters. So I'd say that obviously up close, fight off the back foot, and then the third point, and this is something I always want from Eubank, and he's got better recently, but I just don't be wild in there. You don't need to be. You're at a point now. He's old as the edge for that. I think he's like 33 or 32 now, Eubank. 33. So you don't need to be fighting like an amateur anymore, swinging wildly. You need to be getting behind that jab, staying off the back foot, keeping him back. You can swing when the time comes. I ain't saying fight like someone who's in the shell, but I think he's at a point now, Eubank, in his career where I think now he needs to like get that out of his game a bit. It's 33. You get another couple of years, and he's basically a veteran. So I think he's been in there enough times now, Eubank, to know when the right time to swing or not swing. I don't hate him for being wild because it's what makes his fights entertaining, but I think sometimes you just need to be a bit just relax with the swinging, because that's where you guys can catch you off balance, and that's where you can be caught off balance. In George Groves' fight, I did it all the time, and it was very frustrating. So if you want to land the big shots, you can do it, but just set it up a bit more. And I think that's why I want to fight off the back foot. Off the back foot, he'll land those shots, but he isn't as reckless with it when he does it. So yeah, those are my 3 points though. I think for Eubank, like I said, fighting off the back foot, keeping the fight up close and not being wild. I think if you can keep it at a certain distance, I think you'll be fine. I think with Eubank, people don't like him, but you can't deny Eubank's talented and he's got these skills. He isn't maybe as good as what people thought, but he's still at a certain level where you need to respect him. And I think these are the type of fights where you do favour him a bit more, because these are guys who aren't at the elite level, but they're at a certain level where the fight's competitive. And yeah, a very exciting fight this one. These two don't like each other, so it always helps when you've got the bad blood in the fight. It definitely helps to sell the fight anyway. It's one of those sort of fights as well that kind of, you get enough people watching it because it's exciting. Eubank has got a name, and like I said, when you've got two decent fighters, it makes for an interesting one. So yeah, in terms of my prediction though, I think it's an interesting fight. Two guys at a certain level, maybe British level. We'll see what Eubank is at. I think Smith's definitely at British level. He's been there with some good guys. Smith, I think the more experienced in my opinion out of the two of them. He's a bit more well versed, more fundamentals. Eubank has the star power. He has that exciting style. He's better recently. It's a very good fight, but I think Eubank takes this via decision, to be honest with you. I think Smith's good, but I think Eubank will walk him onto a couple of shots, and I do think he'll drop him at least once in this fight. If it's a KO, I mean, I'd be shocked if Smith KOs Eubank, to be honest. Smith's very good, don't get it twisted, but I just think I think Eubank's just got that bit more. He's a bit more he's the faster. His hand got superior hand speed. I think out of the Smith's more of an accurate puncher, whereas Eubank, if he catches you clean, he'll drop you, but he's not a concussive, not one punch KO puncher. But he's got enough there to put you down. Yeah, I can just see Smith maybe overreaching with the overhand right, and Eubank just flooring him with an uppercut. It's definitely an interesting fight, though. A very close fight. I could see going Smith way. I'm more like 80-20 to Eubank, though. I think he's got enough. I think he's got too much to get it done. The only way he loses, I think, is if Smith kind of all-mans him. But I do feel like they have got a bit of bad blood. I think it will be a war at points, and I think if it becomes that, I think Eubank takes it. A lot of these guys who beat Eubank, they don't beat him by getting into war with him and beating him. They beat him by being the boxer, being smarter, and that's what Smith needs to do in there. And yeah, an intriguing fight, a good one to start off the year. Exciting British clash between two guys, like I said, who don't like each other, and it helps how the pay-per-view. And when two guys don't like each other, it makes the fight all that much interesting. But yeah, Eubank, Smith, I'll do a review after the fight. I think Eubank takes it. And yeah, until next time.